without further ado, I'm giving it up to Peter Zhao, the VP of Product Design in JP Morgan, and also the founder of Ecru, our fellow design community. So please, welcome, Peter.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Anna. As I mentioned, like I'm super happy to be here and just like share, I would say like less formal as a lecture or keynote is more about my personal experience, some thoughts here and there about like how actually think beyond just craft and pixel. I think like I think a little bit about like what message I want to share and also like how we can grow into a design leader, especially like in the age of era. How do we thinking about AI and stuff? So again, thanks for the introduction. My name is Peter. I want to share a little bit more personal journey. So I actually started as software engineer, and then I worked at a small startup company called Pixate, and later acquired in Google. Staying like working about a year and a half as engineer really makes me start to thinking is like, okay, what the product I'm creating, and can I actually more on the creation side instead of like on the execution side. And also like I was asking a lot of the question into design, like why are we designing a certain way? What is the experience going to look like? And I really find out like the company was doing a lot of the platform for design tools. So I had an opportunity to collaborating with designer. So that experience really inspired me is like, oh, I'm very interested in design thinking, how to solve the problem, right? Like the creative way and also like the approach using prototyping. And then I've decided to make the leap. Even though I got a lot of the friction at that time from my family is like you get a okay job as engineer, like why you want to transit into design. Like I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, I would say, as well, for what you can do as a designer and what you can impact. And actually, I feel like I have chose the professional like I really love, and I'm really passionate about crafting the experience and care about the people. So I want to share kind of like in that direction, right? Like so how as a designer, how you influence the business, how you can grow as a leader, how you think just like beyond just like craft and pixel perfect. So that's kind of like my ideas. Like I really learned the hard way. At the beginning, I was doing as many designer like fresh out of the college, same thing, right? Like I'm really looking for that pixel perfect aesthetic of the UI, like creating animation and more in towards what is the business objective, what problem I'm solving, what is the actual customer needs, what is the product strategy around it, right? So I think it is really reshaping how I think as a designer, what I can provide toward on the table, and what I can influence the team to do. Cool. So I guess like the first biggest takeaway or transition is really like see the ecosystem, not just the elements. So understanding that the design for the bigger picture usually is like another layer you are designing on. I remember when I was first started, probably like I super um, pixel perfect and trying to really find out like, okay, this 1 pixel, 2 pixel on the left, like it's going to impact the overall aesthetic, right? However, I'm more and more towards thinking, okay, what is the actual flow going to look like? What is the organization strategy? What is the design process that can constantly produce a better strategy or solutions? So I started to consider a little bit more a lot more, I would say, like in different trends, different cultural, just like take a step back and look the product or the problem, what I'm solving for. And that gives me visibility into a different layer to design, right? So I think it is actually still using the same design thinking or problem solving skills, but you are solving a different, uh, I would say, different perspective of the problem, right? Like you kind of like anticipate a little bit more into the future. And you don't not only working in feature, but also thinking about the overall product, how that fit into the market. And I think at the same time, one of the biggest transition is like understanding the relationship between projects. So I don't view anymore like by a project by itself, like a with all means, I care about quality. So I really want the project to be the perfect. But when you have multiple projects seemingly like stitched together, you start to see the common problems. Like for an example, right now I'm leading the platform service design team at JP Morgan. So we have to support about 60 line of businesses. And which is very important that when we see there's a disconnection between two products, even though two of them are providing a good solution, however, that inconsistency is really triggering the user have a hard time to learn how to use the product, how to interact with the product. It's not about the perfect, for example, animation in this product anymore, right? Like it's more about how can we have reproduce the overall experience and provide that to the user. Secondly, I would say one of the most important skill I pick up is about storytelling. As a designer, I think it's important to understand you are actually telling a story all the time, and you are communicating your design solutions. So capability like that transfer complex ideas to a narrative, or like using visualization to align the team is the superpower as a designer. Um, I- One of the biggest trick I did with all my product partner is actually show a visual or prototype how that experience can look like. It is better, trust me, it is better than 10 PowerPoints or like 10 pages of report. And that's the same thing I was asking my team as well. Is like sometimes you don't need to show all the documentation or explaining your idea. Just create a prototype and showcase how that is working in real life, right? So some of the time in the meeting, people are arguing between the ideas, but when they see the actual prototype, how it is work, they quickly understand why it is not working, right? Or why some of the concept is much better, is going to perform much better. So I think crafting and understanding on your storytelling skills is so important. How do you present, right? Like how do you help others to see the future? And I think the basis of the designer or the ground for designer's role is actually help others to kind of like experience it in the prototype and do that quickly. Thirdly, I want to share is a little bit more from the market perspective, I would say, is like experience. We are in the era for experience. I do believe like design is gonna matter more and more. So I think like, before, if you're thinking about kind of like how products get produced and how it evolve over the years, very early on, what are we requiring is make it work, right? So, for example, in the age of Yahoo or um, like a read.com era, right? Like you just want something work, right? Like I don't care about typography at all. I want to send an email. Like I don't know if you guys have ever experienced like trying to download something and you have to wait for a day and maybe it will fail in the middle of the day. And now I think like I kind of like feel like in the the between is like kind of like the Google and Facebook, like that era is like kind of like make the function very smoothly already, right? Like so it's already have all the functionality expected, but now if you see kind of like the new products on the market, it's more about experience, right? Like so you when you compare why TikTok is winning kind of like the market is because like, it provide a much better experience comparing to watching video on YouTube. Like you don't need to search anymore. Or it create a new kind of like experience that easily can be remembered. And I feel like especially like in the age of AI, it's going to be more and more like that. The cost to produce an app is going to be much lower. There's going to be more and more customization or personalized app on the market. So in those scenario, what is the differentiator? It's actually design, right? Like so, how you understand and empathize the user. How can you get the emotion connection between the user and the product you created? A well-designed experience is usually gonna have more premium pricing, as we have seen a lot of on the market, like a lot of the more premium products, they usually provide a better experience overall. And I think design also some of the time, I feel like design is not art, in my opinion. Design is providing a service. So by providing a service, it has to satisfy a business value. So I think like the biggest difference between design or more like an artist is like artists can use like more personal expression, right? Like I can draw a painting. If you don't like it, I don't care. I can sell with someone else, right? So, however, I think design, one of the key important things like thinking how it works as a business, right? Like how it can satisfy the needs from the user. At the end of the day, design should satisfy a business needs. So understanding the business value as a designer is actually very important, especially when you are talking to other department or even like CEO in the company, right? Like how do you show that something is even worth designing? How do you evaluate the ROI, the return of the investment on the design team, right? What are the KPI or revenue model is needed? How design is going to help that, right? So I think connecting the design metrics to financial outcome is actually helping a lot to put the designer on the table. And I think like I don't know if you guys heard about it before, it's like how to put the design on the table to make the decision, right? I think like that is one of the key how the designer can earn that spot for the decision circle. And the last 3 points, I want to chat a little bit about kind of like what do I think as a designer they should care about. I do think empathy is probably like one of the strongest suits as a designer. So really like how can a designer like champion the user empathy and understanding the core problem is unmatched compared to other functions like product manager, engineer. The product manager is more towards like business and go-to-market strategy, right? And then engineers are much more care about execution. So as a designer, I think like understanding the user and empathize them is really like the strong suits or function as a designer. I am always advocating for field research. One of the example I remember I was using a lot is um, I was working at a supply chain tech company. So at that time, we deliver a lot of data analytics and softwares for supply chain carriers. So one of the project, the company was about to spend millions and millions of dollars on a project, basically evaluating airplane and trying to calculate what is the package that can fit in a cargo airplane. And so basically there's a scanner, right? And then it will calculate every dimension of every package and see where to put it. Um, we actually did a field research before kind of like we start to thinking about or prototyping the tools. We did a field research into the airport in Hong Kong. And surprisingly, what do we find out is the worker over there usually outrun any algorithm. So the algorithm probably can do about 88 to 92%. However, the worker will just look at the airplane, will say, hey, there's a spot over there. Give me that. I can fit it in there. They are so experienced and they basically, there's no algorithm can match how they can easily fit the cargo into the airplane. So at the end of the day, like why I use that uh, um, story is because that's what designers do, right? Like you should be on the field. You should like really look how people use the tools, how people experience the current workflow. Is that really a problem worth solving? How do you actually solve a problem very creatively? So I think like doing understanding the research, how to balance the business constraint with the user experience are all the foundation of the job function as a designer. Um, the other kind of like skills I want to mention is a little bit with AI influence as well is build cross-functional relationships. So I also think design is a function in the organization usually need a lot of touch points and input from multiple stakeholders. Um, really like how to involve multiple stakeholders early in the design process is helping a lot to sell ideas. It's similarly to what I talked before, kind of like storytelling and presentation, right? How to build that relationship, human relationship, have connections across the organization and understanding what each team wants really benefit what you can create and really help you understand how you can push and help you understand the business goal as well, right? Like so, I think having those bridges, not silos, is very important as a designer. I think like that's probably one of the biggest difference between design and engineer as well. Engineer, when they are executing, you probably want more quiet or heads down time, not so much like collaboration. What you care more about is output. As designer, you should care about the outcome, right? So what is actually getting delivered? Is that a good experience? Is having multiple touch points? So I really feel like during that time, how do you communicate as a designer? How do you pull multiple things together is super, super important. And lastly, I want to chat a little bit more into AI. I think a lot of the designer looking into AI I've gave a speech before is like how do you thrive as a designer in the AI era? One of the key talking points I mentioned is AI is a capability, is a tool. So in the AI era, you should care more about the human elements, which is very hard to do in the AI era. But at the same time, embrace AI to really like changing how fast or the efficiency of your workflow. I think AI is very good. I was looking especially I think it's been changing every month, but lately I've been noticing some of the tools is really helpful to improve the efficiency and kind of like have um, capability to brainstorm, to iterate on ideas. I don't see any like really end-to-end AI tool yet, but I'm seeing like some small tools I can easily integrate into my workflow already, or help me figuring out the documentation, the design documentation, right? So I think understanding how AI works, try it out, especially in your workflow, and see what area it can help you is very important. I don't think AI can execute yet for design because like for example I've seen like the Figma AI they launched last year, and you can barely get very creative or innovative ideas, and it's very hard to give them flows. They don't understand. I feel like they don't understand yet how do you think about the problem, how you stitch everything together. But they're better, more and more better if you segmented certain part out and let them execute, right? And at the same time, on the flip side, um, I actually feel like when AI is more and more improving in technical skills, human skills is actually can be more and more important in and valuable in the AI era, right? Like, so how do you actually empathize the user? How do you communicate, as I mentioned, like communicate, build relationship across your stakeholder? And you can just like imagine, right? Like in the future, you can never let an AI kind of sell you a product or in a business negotiation, right? Like that, I don't think that will happen in any time soon because, like, I think as human being, we still there's a trust and there's a gut feeling in the human beings, right? Like, so to how to build that relationship, how do you communicate, how do you came up with the storytelling, all the kind of like previously what I chat about is kind of like just enforce a little bit more in the AI era. Um, and lastly, I think like leading in the with the AI as well is like thinking about how you can influence others about in your team, how you influence through design is going to be very important. Um, I also want to add kind of like some thoughts when I observe how tech company evolve, especially inside the organization as well. Um, I as I mentioned, I'm really believe in the design in the long run because I've noticed more and more company are taking the design-driven approach, right? So instead of before, it's kind of engineering or figuring out how something works. It's more about execution. I feel like the shift like from we already satisfied with making things work. Now, how do we have the better experience is the key part. So I really encourage everyone here, no matter what kind of designer you are, is how you can start thinking about the big picture, how you can stitch the experience together, and also like how you can influence your organization about design. I think like all of that will be very keen and very technical skills in the new age, I would say, in the new age under the AI influence, right? So, lastly, very thank you for Anna and Honor for the invitation. And we do have an YouTube channel. We do actually a lot of the Ecru talks, and we run a podcast. We actually invite a lot of design leaders over there. Also, feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to do a coffee chat. Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much, Peter. Yes, folks, please reach out to Peter on LinkedIn. Please check out the YouTube channel. Uh,
Okay.
Ecru is doing a lot of amazing stuff. They interview designers all across US, doing different things in the community, and they have talks, they have podcasts. So do check it out. And also, they are bilingual, right? So there's
Yeah.
content in Chinese, there's content in English. You can go check it out and find whatever suits your needs. Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing today, Peter. I think what really stuck with me is what you were saying about AI, right? How we still need to set the direction, right? How we
Yeah.
still need to be there and understand the real challenges of users in order to come up with solutions that would actually work for those problems, right? And then
Right.
map
Right.
map those solutions and those problems to actual business strategies. That's, I
Yeah.
think, is going to be the core, really
Yeah.
moving on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also do think like AI is improving, as I mentioned, improving efficiency in a lot of way. For example, as a designer, I have to learn a lot of things, right? Like, so I
Mm,
need to learn the industry knowledge, domain knowledge, and also learn new skills, always. And I think like one of the superpower of AI, I would say, is in education, right? Like, so it can really pinpoint and give you the knowledge related to
mm,
what you are looking for instead of you have to learn through a class or learn through a lesson. So I feel like AI is improving a lot of the redundant steps in your workflow. So
mm.
help like try it out and then see what works for you, how you can stitch and improve your workflow. I think it's kind of like embracing the technology. Yeah.
Awesome. Arno, do we have any questions? I think we've been having a lot of questions today.
We do have a lot of questions. Thanks a lot, Peter, for your talk. We do have a lot of questions, and perhaps we can start by staying on the topic of AI, right? So, received two questions. One from Vladimir, who asked, "Which AI tool helped you to enhance your daily work?" And also a question from Anna, which is sort of similar. Are there any AI-powered tools that
Mm.
your team is using at the moment? What are the
Yeah.
attitudes toward AI in the US design community? So, Peter, what about the tools that you're using with your team at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm using Perplexity and Cloud a lot lately. So Perplexity is a very good tool to kind of like search and grab all the information. I almost use it replacing so I think there's a little bit typo there. Let me share the two website.
Perplexity. Okay.
Yes,
Claude. Okay, as
and
well.
Cloud. Thank you, Sharon. And Cloud is very good for front-end engineer and like some of the quick demo. So I've been using that to kind of like generating some quick demo code, and even like sometime I want to build some customized module potentially. I'm gonna use Cloud to try it out. It and some of the exciting tool I've been noticing is like, for example, Lovable. Lovable is a tool that you can generate an app basically 0 to 1 from a prompt. It will build the functionality. It will build everything for you. I think it's pretty cool concept, but like
Mm.
um, not a super complex app, but it can build like some small games, things like that.
Very
Yeah.
Hmm, okay. So Perplexity, Claude, and Lovable, to
Yes.
summarize. Okay,
Yeah. And I would
fantastic.
say though, I'm not too sure about Chinese company. I feel like during my last chat with the professionals in China, like I feel like the speed or um, kind of adopting to the new technology is much faster
Mm.
than a lot of the US, especially like probably like in my industry. I mean banking, so it is highly regulated. We cannot have outside, like direct outside of AI tools because of data security issues. And that apply to a lot of big company like Oracle, Cisco, things like that.
Mm,
So there's a big concern for data leak, right? And also on top of that, I feel like a lot of the AI tools we have been chatting about is really large language model.
mm,
A lot of the expert industry were like very, for example, like JP Morgan has been in the market about banking for such a long time, right? It has
mm,
a lot of private data about financial. So there's no reason to share those data to, like, say, public company, right? Like, so they would not do that. So for example, what we actually did is like we struck a deal with OpenAI and we actually bring OpenAI into an internal, like basically develop our version of OpenAI based
mm,
on the data and train that.
mm,
I actually feel like a lot of the smaller language model or like using a very specific or expert data to
mm,
train certain AI agent is
mm,
potentially more as the future
mm.
for AI. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really aligns with what I'm seeing here as well, and that also in a way repeats the history of machine translation, right? Before large language models, the industry of machine translation, and folks with localization
Mhm.
background in the chat can add to this or correct me if I'm wrong. But machine translation also took this path from like more general translation, like one database to rule them all, right? And then they pivoted into specialized machine translation engine, say like for legal documents or for marketing or for certain like for healthcare, right? And those specialized machine translations performed significantly better than general machine translation on the same topic. So I believe AI is going to kind of repeat this path, right? And combined with the accessibility of it, right, with all the tools that you
Yeah.
mentioned, is going to be even more custom than before. So we might be moving from apps for everybody. Hey, our goal is to sell expensive. Our goal is to get million of users on the first year. Maybe we're moving to app for 10 or app for
Yeah.
5 or app for 1 that you just made
Yeah.
for yourself to solve your own problem, to solve your own task, being that, work or personal. So
Yeah.
that's a very interesting shift there.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest shift in AI, the direction I've been seeing is how to let AI is not a consultant, but change to an agent, right? Like so, the concept of AI agent, which I think like the biggest difference is when AI can actually take actions in your
Mm,
workflow. And I think like that's what the industry is moving towards. For example, I think like in one of the presentation shared from Workday, their CPO was mentioning is like the AI is can actually integrate it into a SaaS platform and can take
mm,
actions, for example, pulling the data of a payroll and generating report. Like they understand the context and they can execute, take actions on behalf of the context. I think like not only like you're searching or chat with
mm.
with all the AI tools, but like how
Right.
in the future, for example, it will just like book the airplane tickets for you, and you don't
Mm,
have to think about anything related to vacation at all, right? So,
yeah.
yeah,
Sounds like a dream.
yeah,
All right. During that conversation about AI, we had another questions about AI tools that you would use for user research. So Sharon, great for the assist,
yeah.
answered that you use Dovetail, right? Are there any other tools that you're using for user research. So perhaps not only to, assist in better understanding humans, or assisting during interview, but also, compiling data and coming up with report faster.
Yeah.
And that part is coming
So
from, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think Full Story is a very good tool as well. And I was lately was chatting with Sprig as well. I'll type those two. So all of them, I think, have very strong and very powerful AI, and I see a lot of the potential kind of like in this is more enterprise user research tools, right? Like so you can kind of like record a lot of like multiple sessions, analyzing the user behavior on top of that, and understanding like kind of like self-analyze some of the pain points in your flow, which is super powerful. Um, but at the same time, I am not always buy in, like as I mentioned in the human factor portion, right? I think
Mm,
data can only tell you so much.
right.
If you measure everything for design using metrics, you will not get a really good design solution, I would say. So as I mentioned, the metrics can help you analyzing how the flow works, but let's just say subscription, right? Like so, if I want subscription rate to be dropped, I can hide them, right? I can make it super hard
Right.
and just like add a lot of friction to unsubscribe. But is that a good experience? No, of course. And then is it gonna help you in the long run? No, right? So I think there's a lot of human part or human factor to really understanding what are you designing for, and also I would say design ethics, right? So how can you create a product from the long run is gonna success instead of short run KPIs. Yeah.
All right. Okay. To stay on the topic of content, user research, sorry, Anna asked previously, how do you conduct user research with your team in your daily work?
Good
Yeah.
question. So I would talk a little bit to the trends and I'll talk like usually how it works. So we do a lot more qualitative research. So kind of like recruiting the users who we want to talk to, right? What are the research we're gonna validate it against? For the quantitative part, as I mentioned, it's more about like kind of like tracking and analyzing on top of the sessions. Um, but I do feel like the field research or the qualitative research is really important and help decide the project from early on instead of there's two part, right? Like, so I think usability usually is after the product is launched, you are validating, but kind of like before, how when product is still explore in shape, how do you catch problems is one of the focus area um, in our research team. And also, I would say like the industry, I feel like is transit a little bit into foundational research as well. So foundational research is basically the project is not even there, right? Like you don't have a clear project yet. It's more about kind of what are some of the foundational trends or foundational problems in the product? Can I explore some of the directions for the team to consume? So I've been starting to notice some of the research lead was mentioning like that's kind of a trend, and some of the company are starting to do that early on to catch problems and propose new project basically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I'm so happy that you said that, Peter. I'm so excited because I'm now taking a course on innovative user research,
Yeah.
taught by Sam Lander, who used to lead user research for Amazon, and she was talking about the same thing in different words because she's more um, I'd say, scholar background, right? So she was talking about using anthropological methods in research in applied scenarios, right? So instead of just jumping to that MVP or just jumping to that MRD, go and observe your users in their actual life scenarios. Go observe
Yeah.
users, record like hundreds of hours of footage of your user just interacting with your product,
Yep.
find trends, find
Yep.
what are the problems that actually exist that are actually untapped that your product can address, instead of like trying to invent problems based on that
Yeah.
like nameless cold data that you got through quantitative research. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy to see more people bringing it up, because I also strongly agree with this direction. We really need to put research
Yeah.
forward, right? We need to put research forward, especially in the context of what you were saying about importance of design, right? And how
Mm.
design becomes a differentiator. In order to do our design properly, we need to do our user research homework properly. We need to have this foundational user research in order to create design that actually addresses the problems and
Yeah.
delivers that delightful experience that is going to be
Yeah.
life or death for a business.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And also one of the things I think like what you're touching on is really resonating with me is kind of like um when you talk about the problem to solve, right? Like it's a little bit related to I was mentioning to think about the big picture. I would say as a designer, when you are kind of like moving through the ladders, you will have the sense at the beginning you'll probably only care about okay, how do I design it good until you start to ask question, is that a problem worth solving
Yep,
from beginning? I think like starting to ask those tough questions or make hard decision is a way to kind of like grow, I would say.
absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Peter, going back to your presentation,
Yeah.
you mentioned the importance of storytelling. And Bridget asked, do you have any tips for strengthening your storytelling skills?
Um, I would say practice, right? Like storytelling is a skill for communication. So I think like for communication, um, there are some books. I think one I really like is Think Fast and Talk Faster. Um, and talk, think fast, talk, uh, think faster, talk smarter. I think I like that
Oh,
Mm,
name. Yeah. So, and it is from Matt, I believe. And yeah, Matt
mm,
Abrahams. So I think really like think what do you message you want to put in there. Think before you talk. I think like that's one of his recommendation in the book as well. And understanding your audience, understanding what message you want to project to them, and um, and at the end of the day, I think it is kind of like a craft that you have to practice. So try talk to more people. Don't be shy, right? Talk even I was joking sometime, but also half serious is like make friends with your building security and front desk. Like they probably know a lot about things going on with your company. So
yeah,
making more friends in different department, um, yeah, just like have more practice will always help you for storytelling.
all right. Okay. More questions about, how to translate user needs into business value. That's the question I asked for you. Based on your own experience, what advice could you give to effectively translate user needs into business value?
So I always feel like user needs are always connected to the business value, right? Like, so user needs are basically the problems you are trying to solve. Um, and I would say it's harder, sometimes it's harder to evaluate the ROI, right? So that's actually one of the latest, like, because right now I need to lead the design system team. Um, that's one of the challenge. Like, for example, in the design system, how do you even evaluate to have some components be built or some patterns to be aligned? So um, I would say is kind of like probably like start searching what are the business care about? What is the KPI they are tracking as a business org? What do you think is linked to that KPI, right? Like you can trickle down, you can kind of like calculate, even like on a project level, like let's say we're redesigning a flow, we can start calculating right now the revenue, how much is generated from that workflow, right? Like, and what is the impact, what is the drop rate? It can look like how the pain points, how much the pain points actually contributed to those drop rates or adoption rate. So I think like starting to connect the dots, and then you can even calculate is like, hey, I want to have two designer for 2 quarter working on this project. You can calculate the salary, right? Like that's roughly the cost, and starting to calculate the ROI. I think like have that sense, understanding is like, are you solving the right problem? Are you actually contributing to the bigger picture? It's going to help you win a lot of the arguments. So like when product or business department come over and say, hey, why are we having this redesign for the logo? Then you can articulate very clearly why or what's the needs over there, right?
Very good. And question asked by Anna as well, which is sort of related to that one. With over 60 stakeholders you are serving at the moment, how do you stay updated to their business priorities? So it's a bit what like you were explaining, right?
Yeah, I think it's
Mhm.
Mm. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love how you talk about ROI. I think we need more we need more people talking about ROI design. That's so fantastic. And what you were saying just reminded me of what of my former leaders used to say in the when I would come to her and say, hey, we need headcount. We're spreading so thin. We don't have enough people. And what they told me was, hey, if you cannot create value, if I cannot trust you to create value with 5 people, why should I expect you to create value with 6 or 7 or 10? Very tough comment to hear early in your
yeah,
leadership journey, but also true in a way, right? You need to you
yeah.
need to be very mindful of as a leader. And here, when I talk about leadership, I don't mean like necessarily you manage people, right? But I think many of us have been in a situation where you lead a project, right, or you lead a work
Mhm,
group, or you lead maybe a virtual team, right?
mhm,
So I think it's super important to think about how we
mhm.
create value as a team and what is the ROI of this work that we're doing.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think it doesn't mean. I think there's also a connection is like the short term
Mhm.
ROI, right, and the long term. So, for an example, I feel like the pay, especially like the pace
Mhm.
of Chinese company and US tech is like so different. Um,
Mhm.
but how do you balance out the short term? Like as I
Mhm.
mentioned, the subscription rate is a great example, right? Like that's a
Mhm.
short-term metrics versus the long-term impact. Um,
Mhm.
and I think like that's also very hard to do because like you need to kind of like balance in the short-term KPI. And even like to be honest, like some leaders probably they can only gonna be in that position for they won't always be there. So right.
Right.
So but like how do you build up a case that care, like let other people and influence other people to care about the long term? A little bit like more towards like communication, storytelling, right? Like, so how can
Uh-huh.
you get buy-in? I think like that's one of the hardest lesson I have learned is getting buy-in in like building the relationship, get buy-in, build like have more friends
Mhm.
instead of enemies in the company, and get support. I think is also important to help you to win the arguments. Yeah,
That's a great point.
yeah,
And I like how you bring storytelling in the picture, because that also resonates with me in the context of the user research course that I'm taking right now. When we present our findings, when we present our potential solutions, right? It's very important to influence your stakeholders, influence the team to kind of envision this better future with you, right? And
yeah.
absolutely, that's where storytelling comes in. And I think it's hard to master storytelling honestly in business environment. And I super relate to Bridget's question here, because it's about being flexible, right? It's all about
Yep,
being flexible. It's not a cookie cutter thing. It's not like you learn storytelling once and then
yep,
you're done with it, right? you can you
yep,
can you can sit down by yourself and learn how to use Figma, for example, right? But you
yep.
cannot sit down by yourself and learn storytelling. It's an iterative process that happens um, in the time points where that you maybe have little control over, right? And it happens in presence of other people. Yeah. So
I
it's
agree
it's
with
it's
that.
quite tricky to master, because you need to kind of constantly read the room, right? Read the room, read this stakeholders, see what their mind is set on, what are their goals, and how to bring the vision of better future that involves long-term thinking from them. I think that's quite tricky,
Mm.
but also that's the ultimate goal, right? Influence people to envision this better future and um, buy in to build this better future together with you.
Very true.
Totally.
I would even add that it's even harder when you do it in a language that is not your mother tongue. So that adds a bit of
Absolutely,
complexity to that.
absolutely. That's challenge for some of us working in China. Yeah, absolutely. I feel you. I feel you.
All right. Okay. We don't have any further questions unless the last questions coming from the audience last minute.
Last call. Last call for question. Just
Perhaps we can
jump
take
straight
one
in.
last question. Yeah. Ralph doesn't have any question,
That
surprisingly.
is surprising. Oh, hey, question from Karen. Last
Okay.
question taken.
How do you work with legal team? So that's a question for you, Peter.
Oh,
I feel like that's a loaded question. That sounds like a loaded
that's
Okay.
too
question.
much. I
There's a bit of background behind that question. I don't know.
don't know what's the context.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sharon, do you want to share some context, Sharon? Maybe you want to jump in and like tell us a little bit more
Yeah, I
about
don't know.
this.
I feel like this is just like based on my like own experience recently. Like I'm trying to like push something like really hard to the legal team to like get
Mhm.
their, you know, kind of like for as a content designer, you always have to like work with the legal to make sure that everything is approved by legal. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like really hard to do that because like legal will be like,
Right.
oh hey, you can't use this words. You have to change that. And I just like
Yep.
really curious to see like this also like really happened to your team as well because I know you're also like working in a very similar industry as I am right now. So I'm just like really curious to see like how you work with the legal team or like the compliance team
Yeah.
on like a daily basis, I guess. Like how do you push back or even just like convince them
I
sometimes?
think I think like sometimes just like giving them the context, I would say, is like, hey, here's the actual use case, and can you tell me a little bit more about your concerns? And I think like to me, I would say one of the collaboration pain points with the legal team is potentially legal usually come very late, right? Like so it's
Right,
like
yeah.
the product or content, everything is like settled. It's very
Mhm.
hard to adjust at that time because like all the work is done. Um, so one of the recommendations is like potentially have some legal partnership. I would say like kind of like have the legal come in a little bit early and
Mhm.
give their thoughts. I like actually I think in general that's a good idea. So and it kind of like resonating with one of the points I mentioned is like don't work in silos. Designer, you should really consider all the stakeholder and early on. So Even when collaborating with content designer, one of the key I find out is like loop them in early on, right? Like don't wait until everything is settled, then get like reaching out to the content designer for feedback. So that's I would say was some of my thoughts on legal.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Okay. We don't have any further questions, so I guess we can move to the breakout rooms.